Welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you.
My guest today is special and she's coming from Canada. I'm so glad having you. Welcome, Erin Willett.
Thanks, Jürgen.
Let me a little bit introduce you. You are born in Quebec. You live now in Montreal. Where is our common connection? It was a One Better World initiative. Seeing you introducing yourself to Ian Spears, who is already guest in my podcast. And I said, wow, this girl has such a power and such ideas and great things. I have to get her into my podcast. And glad we managed it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So looking on your starting of your career, you studied commerce marketing and graphic design. And if I'm looking a little bit on your track or the history, sooner or later you started your own companies.
Yeah. Should I tell you about that?
Sure. Is it something in your nature that you say, no, I like to be independent, shaping the ways, shaping your style and future, how you need it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't do well with authority, first of all. And I couldn't really find very, very early on in my career, I couldn't really find an example of a job or a leader or, I couldn't really find an example of someone or some role that represented me and that looked like me. I felt very out of the box in the marketing world, in the graphic design world. I always felt like I fell between artist and business person. And I felt quite honestly a little beaten down by it for a couple of years while I was studying in marketing. I thought there's never really going to be a place for me and I'm going to be depressed the entirety of my career and I'm going to have to climb this corporate ladder and, have some junior associate something or other job, which just was not for me. But eventually, I don't know, I call it a wake-up call or something. I had a day where there was an epiphany very shortly after I graduated from graphic design, where I had a nickname at the time that a friend had given to me. And I won't tell you the whole thing about the nickname because it can be long, but essentially the nickname represented me being too emotional and too soft for business. And he was kind of teasing me. And so he gave me a nickname. It was Eebs, EEBS. We'll save the story for another time. But anyways, I was walking down the street a cold winter day, 4 months into the first job that I got out of my studies. And I was just depressed, creatively depleted. I felt like my work meant nothing. I felt misunderstood and stifled, trapped. And I looked up into the sky for an answer. Honestly, I was just like, oh my God, what do I do? And I saw the nickname Eebs in the clouds. I swear to you, this was a vision. And I just knew at that point that what I needed to do was to pursue that role, that name, pursue that identity, that part of me, the part that was too soft for business, who was misunderstood and artistic. And so that was the day that I decided to freelance in creative direction and graphic design. And then very quickly, my role kind of just evolved because I was working with a lot of startups who needed me to do a lot of different things. I always, from the very beginning, had a longing, not just for independence and for space to be myself, but I also had a longing to do good in the world with my work, to have a positive impact. I studied marketing not to sell people things. I studied marketing to express myself and to help other people express themselves. And the more work I do, the deeper I get into my career, the more I see how little room we give people to express themselves, how much we are taught to communicate in a box that makes sense for our bosses or our parents or our life partners or, society. And I'm on a mission. I can trace it all the way back to when I was 10 years old. I'm on a mission to create room for individuality.
Great. I think you mentioned two pieces, that is emotion and thinking outside the box. If I look on the studies worldwide, what are two of the key leadership skills on which is worldwide in all cultures? It's everything under the top 10 is emotional intelligence and thinking out of a box.
For me, they're not mutually exclusive. If we want to think outside the box, we need to connect with our feelings.
Yeah.
The box is analytical. The box is thought process, patterns. The box is what we were taught. Logical stuff. Outside of the box is what we feel.
And the crazy thing, if you look on brain science, logical part is on the left brain and that emotion, creativity is in the right brain area. And if you dance on the brain from kids, then that's great balanced. People coming to school, it's going to the left brain because we're taught only to think logical.
Right.
And it's now a hard way back to teach the people to use more the right brain, to have more the wise, the sage and the relaxed part part and the fun part to go in the flow and be creative and more happy, because the happiness is driving if you are emotionally happy and have that freedom.
Oh, yeah. I mean, being a conscious leader is, for me, about returning to our core and removing as many layers of learning as we can, as many layers of learning about, things that we learned about ourselves, which I'm saying very much in air quotes, because we are told things about ourselves, which we take forward into our adulthood, which are not necessarily true about who we are. I really want to help people to return to the core, to that emotional, free-spirited, creative, hopeful, exploratory, curious child, the version of us that looks at the world with wonder rather than with doom, rather than with a lens that tells us that we know exactly how things are going to go, because we really don't. So I think we'll return to if we return to a place of childlike exploration through emotional engagement, we will have more trust in the uncertainty of life and the uncertainty of our work and the uncertainty of where all of us as a species and where the planet will go,
Is that then your program, the Change Leader Collection, is a result of your ideas and thoughts, where you open that possibilities to your customers that they can have that wide set of experiences?
So the Change Leader Collection, so I've been a freelancer for the last 10 years. I've played a lot of different roles. As I said, I started in creative direction. I did graphic design. I did marketing strategy, brand strategy. I did brand coaching, culture strategy, and more recently, leadership development. And the Change Leader Collection feels like the most honest interpretation and collection of what I have learned and what I know to be true in my bones and in my gut about how we will face change as leaders and about the role of each of us as leaders in moving towards a future that is more thriving for ourselves and the people around us. And the collection includes a short book, a toolkit of self-directed exercises, as well as a leadership program that people can go through over 12 weeks. And I mean, to be very honest, it was kind of born out of, yes, a lot of want for me to put down what I know to be true, but also a little bit of frustration around the traditional consulting model of how people believe culture strategy and change strategy will happen. I have attempted over the last 6 years to quote unquote be a consultant in culture building and in change strategy. And I believe in my methods and I believe in my approach. And I know I have the experience and the expertise to get people there. But what I feel from the people who want to hire me over and over is that they're not actually ready to go as deep as they need to go if they want to create a business that's ready to face change. So it's frustrating to be a consultant in that space, because what it means is that if you want to land a client, you need to shrink down your method to make it digestible. You need to not fully take it all the way there, if you know what I mean. So Change Leader, the collection, was very much an invitation for people to say, to make accessible the information that I have to people who are ready to go there.
Yeah, and you have to be ready to go outside your comfort zone. Otherwise, it will not happen.
If you do not go outside your comfort zone, how could you expect your team and your company to face change? Because change is uncomfortable. It's outside of our comfort zone. We are the ones who are setting the tone as leaders for how willing our team will be to face discomfort. So it all comes down to us. It all comes down to our relationship with ourselves. It all comes down to our own willingness, not to have it right, but to explore who we are and what impact we want to have and what blocks our relationship with change and what patterns we are bringing forward from our past. It's our own willingness to return to that emotional, creative child who's willing to play. Yeah, it's all about the self.
And in Germany, we have a monk, Pater Anselm Grün, who is thought leader in spiritual leadership. And he is a good friend to the Dalai Lama. And he said, you cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself. And it's coming to the same experience. You have to know yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to be yourself. And then you can go to a role model to others. It's so crazy that over the planet, every time I find the same experience like with you now. The customers coming to your training, do you see an change from the day they arrive, the day they leave? Or are there some who leave in the middle because they escape? Because that happens sometimes in such trainings as they're getting confronted with their own emotions.
I mean, luckily for them and for me, I'm very comfortable with the emotional experience that they are going through. And I think I do a pretty good job of warning people at the beginning of the fact that the more uncomfortable it becomes, becomes and the more emotional it becomes, the better they are doing, that this is what it is supposed to look like. This is, the breakdown is a part of it all. But that said, so when I do my trainings, I'm a very, very, very forthright sort of person when I'm doing my business development. I'm telling people exactly what they're getting from me, exactly what sort of process we're going to be going through. And that obviously eliminates certain potential clients. There are some people who just don't want to go there. For the most part, the people who engage me one-on-one are very ready to do the work. And I think, of course, that doesn't mean that it's all peaches and it's all positive along the journey. I think what's important in moments when it's not positive is to remind them that there is a process to this. So just because it is emotional and soulful work does not mean there is not a process to change. And we need to trust the process. So I rely heavily on my method to guide people through the journey. And I ensure that there are checkpoints along the way so that even when we feel lost, we know that it's an intentional period of lostness. We are going to that uncertainty with a mission and a vision. And I think that helps us to remain on course. When I'm doing group coaching and group training where the people in the room didn't necessarily engage me one-on-one or pay for the actual training themselves, that's always funny because the skeptics are loud, and not just vocally, but physically, emotionally loud. You can see it in body language, even in Zoom. You can see the people that are reticent to change. My approach in that sort of situation is to focus on the people who are ready and to let the people who are not necessarily ready catch up at their own pace, because I spent way, way too much time in my earlier career attempting to work with people who were not ready to do this work. And before I was calling it culture work, I was calling it identity work with the startups that I was supporting. I tried really hard because I felt that it was important for startups to work on their identities and to explore the personalities and the identities that exist within their companies. I tried really hard to convince them of the necessity of this work. And, I didn't waste years because I learned a lot from them. But at this point in my life and in my career, I just see that there are so many people who are ready to do the work, and I would far prefer to make myself available to them. And this is also connected to the fact that specifically what I do is culture strategy work. I don't believe that we're going to shift cultures by attempting to move the whole culture forward. I don't think we're going to shift cultures by doing a large scale assessment of the different strengths and opportunities and weaknesses and personality traits within the culture. I think we will shift cultures forward by allowing the individuals within that culture and community to decide for themselves when they feel the best, when they feel the most creative, how they want to communicate honestly. I want to give individuals who are there the tools and the space to communicate honestly with themselves and with the people around them, to recognize that, they have all the answers that they are looking for. They don't need my strategic guidance. I will facilitate the space so that they can come up with answers. But ultimately, it's all about them feeling motivated by their own vision and their own relationship with themselves. So this is what I call doing microculture work and really focusing on the potential of microcultures and then allowing those to ripple outwards into the groups that they work with or live with or play with or are in relationship with.
And it's my same experience in Germany, but as well in India. If you're using the people's knowledge and experience, their solutions are so powerful and they studying the change because it's coming from themselves. So you don't need to think about the big change management initiatives coming from the top down, because that mostly don't work. But if you have that momentum from inside, that is an explosion and eruption. I see you see it in the eyes of the people, what was coming on power, and you have to sometimes to slow down because they are doing too much that they can consume. And I see that.
I love that. I love that so much. I want to, there's a misconception around change that it's going to happen in really big.
It's no project where you say milestone A and B and step A and
exactly.
C and then it's working. No, there is no checklist.
No, it's not a checklist. It's not it's not a big strategic plan. It's going to happen in very, very small micro moments, human interactions, minute long conversations between people. That's what's going to spark the momentum around change, to give people the opportunity to just communicate honestly. And I couldn't agree more that the solutions that people have themselves are the most powerful. It's almost like, we were talking earlier about needing to unlearn, patterns and all of these traits and all this stuff. But one of the things that we need to unlearn is the fact that we don't have the answers and that there is an authority that does. And I think that that's something that's ingrained early on in the educational system that tells us you need to sit and learn what the right answer is because there's someone else before you that decided what that answer is. And then we move into hierarchical business models after our education that tell us that there's someone, quote unquote, at the top that has the answer and has the direction because they somehow have done something to prove that they have the right answer. That thought process of looking elsewhere for the answer is something that we really need to unpack. And that's when you're talking about people's eyes lighting up in session. I think that that's when they light up. It's like, oh, I have the answer. I have an opinion. I have a belief system. I have a desire. I have an urge. I have a longing. I have something. I am something. Really back to that relationship with self, the way that you put it, know self, be self, love self. And I think you were speaking specifically about what it means to lead yourself, know self, be self, love self. I couldn't agree more that it's this like leading yourself is this compassionate, soft-handed, loving, patient, exploratory, reflective process. It's not about leading yourself is not about kicking yourself in the ass because you took a day off and getting back to your checklist and filling your schedule. And no, that is not leading yourself. Leading yourself is about being in relationship with your best, highest self and what your needs are.
Yeah, and it's a lie that you can work 10 hours, 14 hours a day and meeting. And if you think about it, it's nothing productive saying like that, because I know some people don't like to have that messages, but I think thinking the same. And my experience is being yourself, being concentrated on that moment you're doing something is much more productive than running in a hamster wheel. Or a rat race, I think you call it, and thinking you're productive in that way. And at the evening, you think, have I done something which makes sense? Mostly you say no, but I was busy. There is something else. Funny thing you said as well with emotions, coming back to another role you have, maybe you're supporting women in power as a member of a board of advisors, looking on all what we just talked about with empowerment. I see as well on female leadership that if you look on historically, female women got taught to be functional, to haven't a voice, just to accept their role and serve. I think that is a challenge which still a bias we have, or the women have inside, which gets now to open the fence, to get out of a chain to what we just said and think about there is more. I have an opinion. There is a life with different opinions, and that female emotion is a gift which we need to have more balanced teams which are then more successful.
Well, diverse perspectives is what we need to have a balanced team that are more successful. And when my work with women in power, so specifically, I started a culture building workshop series for women 3 years ago. And what I learned in that culture building workshop series, it was called Culture Building for Female Leaders. And I hosted this thing with 2 other facilitators. We created this day where we were going to talk about culture building strategy and understand our own role as leaders, as women who are in positions of leadership in shaping culture and moving it forward. There were a couple of things that came out of that workshop series that greatly inspired my next steps. But one of them was that we hosted a session in New York, and that entire day was filled with a lot of frustration and a lot of tension because the women who participated said, we don't need any other ideas for how to build culture. We need other people to be in these sessions. We need other people to be in this room to contemplate their impact on community and on relationship dynamics at work. What came out of that whole experience for me was a recognition that I really think that what's broken or what needs to be shifted is not so much the perception of women in positions of leadership, but it's the actual business structure, the operational structure, the growth structure that we use to build business, which if we really think about how businesses were built and who built them, they were built traditionally by men who use specific traits to exert control and grow their power and build businesses that were successful successful. But now what we're seeing is that evidently times have changed, and what the world and what the market and what people and the planet demand is for a very, very different style of leadership and a very different style of business structure, operational structure, growth structure, product development. Like all of these things need to shift to reflect what the world and the market and the planet need right now. And what we need is foresight and patience and collaboration. And those are traits that typically people would associate with women, but that doesn't mean that they aren't traits that all human beings have. It's just that we work in environments that tell us we are supposed to act a certain way in order to quote unquote have success. And that's what's broken. We need to shift our perspective of what it means to be successful. And then we need to have the courage to evolve the way we do business and to change how we structure what we do and how we make decisions and how we set growth objectives. And we need to change that structure in a much more inclusive way, as in different perspectives participate in the conversation of what it looks like to grow and what it means to have impact and what it means to have a purpose as an organization. So all this to say, I really feel that at the time, 3 years ago, when I was doing a lot of these workshop series for women, it was very important for me to inspire women in recognizing how much potential and impact they have simply leading as they are. But really now what that's kind of led to is this place of, once again, wanting to create room for all individuality. We need workplaces that have space for multiple perspectives, because this myopic, top-down, traditional view of what it looks like to do business is killing us. It's just, as we know, it's killing the planet, and it's leaving us exceptionally unhappy and stressed and anxious, so yeah.
You can keep the cat in the camera. It's fine.
Oh, he will stay. He does whatever he wants, this guy.
That's great. If you're looking on the next month, is there something you will say, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward. I'm happy to what is coming out from you. Is there something new which is in development or you already can cheat about?
So I was telling you before, Jürgen, that I'm going through some big changes right now. So I'm part inspired by the contemplation that COVID allowed me, in part inspired by the work that I did on Change Leader. I realized that the traditional consulting model that I was attempting to fit into, where I have, an extended timeline and set deliverables, and I work as an outside party who brings strategy, and, it's not fulfilling. It doesn't allow me to have the highest level of impact that I want to have. It requires me to spend a lot of time in business development and conversation. And I appreciate the conversations because it allows me to support people and get to know people and for them to get to know me. But ultimately, if I really think about my life, I have a lot to say, a lot to share. And there are a lot of people who need this support. And I don't want to not support them simply because they're not an organization who can support me or who can afford me. So in the next few months, what I'm going to be launching with a business partner, collaborator, amazing friend, is a membership-based learning community that focuses on change strategy. And this is going to be a place at a completely different price point than what I was doing before. We want it to be highly accessible for people, and for it to be an ongoing learning environment where we are tackling individual and collective change by exploring theories, business strategy, growth strategy, brand strategy. The other thing that we really want to be is not just a learning community, but an impact community where the people who are members are cooperatively reinvesting in themselves. So every membership fee is going to in part be an investment for whatever impact or cause or project the membership collective wants to be focusing on. I'm so excited because it means that I get to focus on what I love to do, which is create content, which is listen to people as they move through their process of change and support them and over that bridge of change. It's about being in unity. It's about collaboratively learning. I'm really excited about offering something so accessible, because people need this information. They need these communities of support in order to make change happen. I think the fastest way for us to evolve and to progress is going to be to give the tools to the individuals who are already there, which is, again, a theme that continues to come up. It's just now with this project, it won't have to be individuals within organizations. It can be individuals who are self-directed and who want to make change in their lives and in their communities. So what do you think?
Cool. But it's already a content for our next podcast. So I know that's why we are together in One Better World. We like to shape the future more sustainable, more human. And I think there's the same with giving back and supporting people as well. I'm so glad to support people in Africa. They have nothing, but great ideas. They are great brains, and if I can help them with a little idea to get more impact, that's wonderful. Everybody who is doing such platforms, I love it, and I hope I can have more insight soon, because I'm curious what you're doing, and let's see.
It's going to evolve very quickly. Yeah. So we're really, I took a very intentional summer off. Work is very much ramping up right now. And the idea is that I want to be focusing entirely on content development and platform development for this membership community, get it all out there as soon as possible and get people using Change Leader, which is the collection that I mentioned that you brought up. Yeah. Just give people support they need. The time is definitely now for change leaders.
Absolutely. And I think most important of the information will be linked in the show notes so that the people have a right way to find you.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, anyone who's listening, please feel free to reach out. I'm very open to conversation, questions, dialogue, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram as well. Yeah, I'm very open.
Erin, thank you so much to be my guest today. And with all your insights and ideas, it is so inspiring talking to you.
Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I took some notes as well that I'm going to be keeping with me that might inspire some of the learning content in the learning community. So I will absolutely keep you posted.
Cool. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Jürgen. Bye-bye.